This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hello and welcome to another episode of The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett. I am your host, Blaine Bartlett. I was talking to my guest in the green room before we started here, and one of the things, I've been working in the field of leadership development for, literally over 40 years. And I was in a conversation about 15 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that, with Jack Canfield. Jack, started the Transformational Leadership Council that I'm a member of. Have been a member since the very beginning of it. Jack's a good friend. And we were talking about, kind of how we would describe an effective leader if there was a meme that we could kind of organize around, or I could organize around. And what struck me was, I love dinner parties. I love hosting dinner parties. And at that point in time, my late wife and I, we were pretty regularly hosting various dinner parties, Christmas parties, that sort of thing. And it struck me that a host was a good metaphor for a highly effective leader. A highly effective host, somebody that would curate the guest list, make sure that the thing was coming off well, and that kind of stuck with me because all an organization is at the end of the day is a collection of people that are in relationship. And if the relationships are working pretty good, you got a pretty good shot at being successful. And the obvious is the interpersonal relationships. But in a dinner party, people have relationships with their seating arrangements. They have relationships with the food. They have literally with anything. They have relationships with anything. And a good host is paying attention to the qualitative nature of the relationships. And they're using that focus to organize not the roles, but how actually everything comes together. So just leveraging that meme or that notion. My guest today, Taylor Scott, has got a background in hospitality, over 20 years with Disney, with Gaylord Hotels, with Wynn, with Cosmopolitan in Vegas. He's just done an incredible deep dive in the world of hospitality. And he's written 3 books, most of them, one of them in particular, 2 of them in particular are organized around leading with hospitality. His latest book is called Give Hospitality. It has just come out. And he's got some ideas here that I thought would be absolutely perfect for the show, because hospitality at the end of the day, and a good host leader connects to the soul of the business by connecting to the soul of the people. So I want to just welcome, Taylor Scott. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you here. You jumped out, when, again, we were talking back in the green room before we started here. You jumped out of the formal hospitality space at COVID, just right. That was kind of a seminal movement for a whole lot of folks. What, number one, kind of compelled you outside of just kind of everything that was going on in the hospitality space at that point in time? But why write a book? Why move into the space that you're doing work in now? Because you're leading workshops, you're keynoting, you've got content that you licensed, all of it in service of what I'm calling hosting leadership, or leadership hosting. So kind of give us the backstory on this for us, would you?
Yeah, the short story is, like many people in our space during the pandemic, I lost my job. So it was, this was kind of like, okay, I could still stand in at the time, as we all know, virtual unemployment line, or we could take this leap and take this shot and see if we could, create some magic here, for lack of better words. So, but no, as we were talking in the green room, I spent 20 years working, in and around the hospitality and entertainment industries for the better part of 20 years. And I had great leaders throughout that. I had some really bad leaders like everybody else, and a lot of leaders in between. And what I always thought was neat is like, man, I was like, from the early days, I started at Walt Disney World. Like, how much better can you get, And then I always had one eye toward Vegas, because I always felt like if it's not Disney, Vegas was at least on par or a close second in terms of the experience and the amenities and the whole package of hospitality and entertainment. So I was always sort of drawn to come out here, where I still live here today in Las Vegas. But my favorite part about every role that I had were the times when my own leaders would send me and my peers to leadership development workshops. And so I come from a sports background, growing up, born and raised in Kentucky. I was a point guard, in basketball all of my life, and went and walked on in college at Florida Southern College and undergrad, Division II down in Lakeland, Florida. So I always sort of kind of had this leadership gene, and I just loved the part where you got to learn how to be a better leader. And I always would think about, man, I wonder if I could figure out how to do that for a living. And so that's where this all came from. So when the pandemic happened, I had already made a transition from sort of traditional roles in hospitality. And I set my sights, and I started working for a boutique consulting firm here in Las Vegas that created and wrote and designed leadership learning experiences for organizations, and companies would hire them to come in and do these workshops. And so I barked up their tree, and was fortunate enough to be kind of welcomed into that community and learned a great deal. And things were going great until the pandemic. And then that's when the Lead with Hospitality book switched from a passion project to a real life book.
I know that drill. I wrote my fifth book during the pandemic, and I had time to kill. First of all, but it also made sense in terms of there's some content here that needs to get distributed in a broader sense. So. And we ended up developing a number of different programs out of that book. The idea of leadership, and I want to just kind of, I've like I said at the introduction, I've been doing leadership development work for over 40 years, and we've developed from a content perspective, our own models. One of the ways that we describe the way that leaders work in an organization is through a metaphor of a leadership universe. And that leadership universe has different elements to it. And I'm going to just check this out with you. Most leadership development programs, whether it's Maxwell or the Center of Creative Leadership or whatever it might be, most of them are by default focus on the top three areas of this leadership universe, which I'm calling the why, the what, and the how, which is the vision, the strategy, and the tactics. The why, the what, and the how. And that's kind of the beginning and the end. What I'm experiencing and have experienced for a number of decades, actually, is that we're missing the ball in a lot of ways if that's the sole focus of our leadership development work. And this is why I'm so intrigued with this notion of relationship and this notion of hospitality and hosting. Because what it does is it begins to open a possibility that there's something else to pay attention to rather than vision as a starting point. And that starting point could be, and I think it needs to be, what's the spirit that actually drives everything here? And it speaks to the distinction between inspiration and motivation. So with that little bit of a setup, and can you tell us about how you work that may or may not kind of fit in that little universal context?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was 22-year-old me, back in literally 2002, I was on the opening team of Gaylord Palms Resort and Convention Center in Orlando. I was a housekeeping manager, and for the opening. And right before we opened, a couple weeks before, the general manager at the time, John Caparella, well-known hospitality guy, he brought in a guest speaker. And I believe the guest speaker was actually from Cornell, which I ended up going to do my graduate work at.
Great hospitality management school there.
This guy was captivating. So here I was, 22-year-old me. We're all sitting in sort of the lobby, the backdrop, the atrium was the backdrop for this guest speaker. And this guy said something to me that really hit me. He goes, friends, let me tell you something. Whether you work in hospitality for the next 2 years or the next 20 years, I want you to remember the essence of hospitality is the ability to make people feel welcome, comfortable, and important. And I remember being there, 22-year-old me, I'm like, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. Like, that sounds amazing. I want to do that. And then I went and I literally did that for the next 20 years. Front desk manager, housekeeping manager, bell service manager, sales manager, senior sales manager. Came out to Las Vegas, director of loyalty marketing in a couple places. Went back to Disney, led Disney Vacation Club, Disney's version of timeshare, leading the sales team based at the Disneyland Resort. And the reason I share all of that is everywhere I went, I'm convinced that not only is the ability to make people feel welcome, comfortable, important, the essence of gracious hospitality, it's also the essence and what allows leaders to be truly inspirational and transformational leaders is how you make people feel. And that begins, I believe, the journey of being a leader and taking a group of people, turning them into a high performing team of people, and then go and leading them to do things.
Perfect. Yeah, that idea of feeling. When we talk about, in the work that we do, with our organization, the soul of the business, that is people will hear it and they kind of got a mental model of what that means, but it's actually a feeling state. The soul of anything vibrates at a certain frequency. It certainly does. Everything, it's all energy. It's all energy. Everything is energy. Everything is vibrating all the time. It's all moving in frequencies. And if we can tap into that frequency state, then that's where aliveness is. So the idea of feeling, Gloucester in King Lear was asked, by Hamlet, I believe, how do you see? Because Gloucester was blind. And he says, I see feelingly. And I see feelingly with my heart. In your book, Give Hospitality, you talk about 5 principles that leaders pay attention to. And compassion, encouragement, kindness, hospitality, and leadership. Why these 5? And I'm not disagreeing with them at all. I'm actually kind of resonating with them here. But why these 5? How do you actually parse that?
Yeah, it's actually inspired by and rooted in the spirit of Aloha, the Aloha spirit. And up until my honeymoon in 2016, I had never been to Hawaii. And my wife and I, we went there on our honeymoon. And then since then, we've been back multiple times, mostly to Maui. And living in Las Vegas and working on the Las Vegas Strip, they called this, and I didn't know this either when I got out here, they called Las Vegas the 9th island because so many Hawaiian people move here and make their life here. They work in hospitality. So I spent several years on the Las Vegas Strip working with and for Hawaiian people, and I built relationships with them and still have them to this day and would learn about their culture. And then every time we would go back to Hawaii, we would learn a little more. We'd do different experiences and we'd learn more about the stories. We'd learn more about the culture and what aloha really means. So I was heartbroken, along with a lot of other people, when the wildfires happened in 2023, a couple of years ago. They're going to hit their 2-year anniversary of the Lahaina wildfires here in a couple of weeks. So this book is a leadership fable to kind of continue what we started with the Lead with Hospitality platform and the Lead with Hospitality message. But this time it's a leadership fable. And so the thing about compassion, encouragement, kindness, hospitality, and leadership, those sentiments, those leadership virtues, if you will, or those virtues of life align perfectly with ALOHA. There's a Hawaiian word, which I didn't know until I started diving into everything, that literally means compassion, encouragement, kindness, hospitality, and leadership. So that's why the framework we used. We're doing this book on purpose, with a purpose, for a purpose, to not only keep spreading the message and keep pouring into up and coming leaders as well as seasoned leaders, to have some soul and to bring the soul out in their business, in their within their teams, but also we're donating a portion of the proceeds to the Hawaii Community Foundation's Maui Strong Fund. And so that's a couple of reasons why we framed it the way we did.
I love that. I mean, that's really an interesting way of positioning it. And my wife and I have spent a lot of time in Hawaii. As a matter of fact, we're going back over again in January. The idea of Aloha. I mean, just in one sense, the idea of connection, the idea, and I love this, welcome, comfortable, and important. You do a lot of work in the airline industry, and I'm not going to name names here in terms of clients. That's proprietary, and we don't need to go there. And in my experience, I've got over a half. Well, I've got about 5 million air miles. I've done more travel than I, I, I don't have a need to get on another airplane. Um, but the experience of travel is not as glamorous as a lot of people might think it is. As a matter of fact, it's actually fairly onerous. And a lot of it has to do with not feeling welcome, not feeling comfortable, and not feeling important. So, with the work that you're doing with your airline clients, how do you begin to address that? Yeah, fact of life, actually, because it seems to be a fact of experience, factual experience. And I don't care really which airline you're traveling with. And I've got my favorites. Some are far better at it than others. But how do you actually work with the clients with whom you're working in your workshops, and also with the collateral material that you're developing for them? How does that come into play?
Yeah, we try to model what we're putting out with what our message is. That, hey, be human, emotionally connect, and serve selflessly. That's the subtitle of our last book, Lead with Hospitality. But it's rooted in this whole premise that before anybody gets inspired to do anything, they first have to feel. And that principle applies to not only in the context of leadership with your teams, but also in how those we lead are treating guests, customers, and clients. So as guests, customers, and clients, passengers on an airplane, guests in a hotel, patrons in a restaurant, people bellying up to a bar, whatever the case may be, before they're inspired and compelled to go back and visit again, spend more money when they do go back, or especially tell stories about how great the experience is or was, they first have to feel it. And all of this is rooted in research. Not only my 20 years just out here working and experiencing some really good leaders, some really bad leaders, and a lot in between, but working from some of these great brands, the Disneys and the Winds and the Cosmopolitans of the world. But it's also scientific research that I came across, reading people's books like yourself, people like yourself. So Chip and Dan Heath in their book.
Yeah, Chip and Dan's, yep.
Switch, How to Change When Change is Hard. They use Jonathan Haidt's research of what's going on inside the human brain at all time. We have the left side of the brain, which is the logic. We have the right side of the brain, which is the emotion and creativity and the feelings and imagination. And so he has this metaphor, if you will. He says, picture a human person sitting on top of a 6-ton elephant. The person sitting on top is the rider, and that is the left side of the brain. That represents the left side of the brain. The elephant represents the right side of the brain, the emotion. And so here's the takeaway. Both the rider and the elephant have a role in the show. The left side of the brain and the right side of the brain have a role to compel any human to do anything or go anywhere. The rider, the left side of the brain's responsibility, what they contribute to the equation, is they provide the left side of the brain provides the direction of where the person's going to go. The elephant, the right side of the brain, provides the energy and enthusiasm to move, the energy and enthusiasm to change directions, the energy and enthusiasm to change behavior, the energy and enthusiasm to even spring into action at all. And the takeaway that we use, answer your question, how do we bring this up with our clients? How do we message it? How do we introduce it? How do we socialize it? Is we just ask, if the rider and the elephant ever disagree, if the left side of the brain and the right side of the brain ever disagree on which direction to go or whether or not to spring into action, who's going to win the argument? And it's the elephant every single time.
Every single time.
One, you got a 6-ton weight advantage on the person. That's why I love this analogy or metaphor. And the other reason is, remember, the right side of the brain provides the energy and enthusiasm to move. And all this can be summed up with a John Maxwell quote. John Maxwell, once upon a time, apparently said, we can't move people into action until we first move them with emotion.
That's true.
And so that I love that. And so I thought if Chip and Dan Heath could use this analogy Jonathan Haidt gave us, oh, I'm going to use it too. So that's how we bridge it. And then most of the time, people in the audience are like, now that you mention it, I took that new job. I moved across the country. The biggest purchase, the last big purchase I ever made, that was rooted in emotion.
Oh, all purchasing decisions are emotionally driven at
That's right.
the end of the day, every one of them. And that's when we're connecting to the soul of business, or when we're working on connecting people to the soul of business. Yeah, all behavior is generated out of meaning. Yeah, you look at people's behavior, you'll start to understand what's meaningful to them or what's not meaningful to them. So when we're looking at how you connect people to something that is inspirational rather than motivational, motivation is outside of me. It's a carrot and stick. And yeah, I got to keep coming back to the trough. If I'm a manager or a leader, I got to invent something new, and I'm going to miss as many people as I'm going to hit with that thing. But if I can tap into inspiration, the meaning, for the sake of what is this important to you? If I'm that rider on the elephant and I say, we're going to go in that direction, if the elephant doesn't understand the for the sake of what, why, what's in it for me?
Right.
The elephant is not going to move, number one, or if it does move, it may likely be in the opposite direction. And then I got a devil of a time trying to turn that thing around.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
What are some of the easiest ways, and I'm just a crazy question because this isn't easy work, but what are some of the easiest ways that you have found for leaders to actually engage this notion of being an effective host is the way that they actually end up becoming a highly effective leader?
Absolutely. Yep. I have 6 virtues that will answer this question.
Okay, good. Hey, I love setting stuff up.
Yep. Number 1, have a commitment to connection, a human connection. Number 2, strive for self-mastery, emotional intelligence. Turns out it's a thing.
It is a thing.
Components: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness. Put them all 3 together, as we know what we get: relationship management. Number 1, commitment to connection. Connect with your people early and often. 2, as you're connecting, figure out what that looks like for you, what gets you fired up, what gets you disappointed, what gets you frustrated. That's striving for self-mastery. Number 3, approach leadership as a service to other people.
Number 4, you do to them.
That's right. Number 4, engage. Not just engaging to engage, but engage purposefully. By that I mean with generosity. Give your time, give your talent, give your heart. Bring purpose into the conversations. Help people discover their own personal purpose, and then connect their individual role to the overarching purpose of the organization. That's one of the things Disney does really well.
Yeah.
And then recognizing people in terms of engaging. So recognizing, letting them know, hey, I see you and I appreciate and value the way that you do this, that, or the other thing. 1, commitment to connection. 2, strive for self-mastery. 3, leadership as a service to other people. 4, engage purposefully. Number 5, coach people. When it comes time to coach with grace, grit, and intention. And finally, number 6 is this idea of become inspired to inspire other people. So stay filled up however it works best for you. Is it listening to sermons? Is it watching sermons? Is it like me, where like I do that, but like I can't wait. Tomorrow and Sunday, I have 2 Las Vegas Aces basketball games that we're going to. I'm passionate about basketball, so I get inspired. So whatever it looks like for you, stay filled up so you can pour into other people. Connect, strive for self-mastery, serve, engage, coach, and inspire. The main thing, the reason we structured this the way that we did with our model, is how often people listening and watching, and definitely I know you've been around the block a time or 2 here, and mistakes I made early on. How often have we tried to, once we get the leadership role, we get into the position, we join a new organization, and we try to start coaching and inspiring right off the bat, before we've successfully connected on a human level and served them in some way, shape, or form. It usually falls flat. So this is what we like to recommend is when you can, and I know it's not always going to be as linear as that, but just to have that framework in your forefront of your mind and your heart. Have I connected successfully first? before I'm leading. I love the Peter Block quote. I don't even know who Peter Block is. I just know it's a good quote that says, before connection, no work can occur. And I believe that aligns perfectly with your platform of soul of business.
Yep. Yeah, and I do know who Peter Block is. I've had long conversations with him. He's a good guy. Yeah, great work. Great work. Folks have been listening to Taylor Scott, author, trainer, coach, consultant, keynote speaker. Latest book is Give Hospitality. It has just dropped, and you can find it in all of the regular places. He's got 2 other books as well. Where can folks find out more about what you're up to specifically? And if they wanted to book you for a keynote or something like that, how would they go about doing that?
Leadwithhospitality.com. And my email address is taylor@leadwithhospitality.com. And I'm at tscott1502 on Instagram. And of course on LinkedIn, put in Taylor Scott, Lead with Hospitality, and I should pop up. I'll be that redheaded guy that pops up there.
Okay. Taylor, I have greatly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for the wisdom that you brought. I love what you're up to. And folks, as always, as I sign off here, I want to just, circle back with something I always say, you pay attention to nature. Nature is the greatest teacher you will ever find. It will teach you exactly how life is designed to work. There's nothing in nature that is designed to be a center of accumulation. Everything is designed in some way to be a center of distribution. You're part of nature. Act like it. Become a center of distribution and see what happens. I think you will be pleasantly surprised and rewarded. Until next time, this is Blaine Bartlett. You've been listening to The Soul of Business with Blaine Bartlett, and I will see you on the next episode. Take care. This episode is sponsored by The Power of You, a leadership resource for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, and anyone intent on developing their leadership impact and supercharging their career. For more information, check the podcast webpage or show notes. Hi, I'd like to ask you to do something for me if you wouldn't mind. If you like this episode, I'd like you to not only subscribe on your favorite site, but I'd also like you to give a rating. Ideally, a 5-star rating would be greatly appreciated. But I think more importantly also would be just some comments. That helps with the algorithm and it helps build the audience with this. And more than anything else, if you could invite somebody else to listen, just share this episode with a friend, with a colleague. And I'd like to see how we can grow the soul of business. I think it makes a difference. Thanks.